time and they live. And that is because they are spending time with the right people. And if that means starting with you being your best friend, like I did, then that is the journey that we will be going on. So Brain Care is my little acronym that we're going to go through today. And it's my program to help empower people to have better brains so that they can thrive in everyday life. I'm so excited to be here. And just a little bit,
Fallon.
Thank you. I'm so honored. And this is my first big talk in my new fancy chair. So I'm so excited.
I think it's just like super cool. And I'm glad we get to be the first ones to hear it. So
I know it's like so special how the universe works. I've been wanting to get this chair forever. So just so you have a little bit more background on me, I am a coach. I am a certified brain health professional, a certified brain health coach, certified brain health trainer, whichever word you want to use. I ran Amen University, which is the education sector of Amen Clinics under Dr. Daniel Amen, who is an amazing neuropsychiatrist and really looks at the function of the brain through SPECT scan technology, which is a type of scan that measures blood flow and brain activity. And that's kind of how my journey with loving myself and taking care of myself began when I got my first SPECT scan 10 years ago. And I've had several scans since then to check on my progress. And it's been really amazing to see how the brain can heal and be better, which I know is definitely going to be the case for everybody here because you're learning all this amazing stuff. You're in Dr. Wolf's network. And then also I have an Erlin syndrome screening certification. So Erlin syndrome is a visual perception disorder in the brain. And I actually developed it cumulatively. And then I got to the point where I just could not focus or read anymore on a screen or a book because of the damage to the part of my brain, which is back here. It's called the parietal lobe. I had a lot of trauma there and I just suddenly couldn't focus or read anymore. And so I had Erlin syndrome. I got treated for it. And now I am certified as a screener, which is amazing. And basically what we're doing is assessing people to see how difficult it is for them to focus and concentrate. And it has nothing to do with your eyesight. I have like freakishly good eyesight, but I can't really read or look at things unless they have a turquoise overlay on them. And so I am able to help people focus and read better on screens and in books by doing that. And you can find someone in your locality. My personal opinion, I don't think it's really ethical to do them virtually, especially if it's someone who has Erlin syndrome as a result of a traumatic brain injury, because the colored overlays, as much as they are magical and helpful for me and other people that just need them, if it was severe to the point where I could barely go out in public because the light was so bright and bothersome, I would need to get spectral filter glasses and you would need a diagnostician to do that. And then I have a little health coaching certification also from Emory University. So with my list of qualifications, you will notice that I am not a physician. I am not a nurse. I am not a therapist. I have counseled and led brain health trainings for physicians, nurses, and therapists, but I myself am not one. And if you ever need a referral, you can always reach out to me or Dr. Wolf. We have a really amazing network, just so that once you start going through the things that I'm going to be sharing today, you feel good about going to your provider and then being like, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Like, let's talk about bioidentical hormones, or let's talk about doing these labs. Unfortunately, there are some doctors that will look at it and say, this is out of my scope of practice. I don't want to do it. When in essence, like if they're a physician, they can run labs for anything. So that's my little disclaimer. And the cool thing about talking about the brain this whole week with you guys in all the different webinars is that, you know, it is the organ that controls your life. It's the organ of your motivation, your happiness, your clarity, and then how you get along with other people. There is a man in, I think it was like the late 1800s. His name was Phineas Gage. and he worked on the railroads, and he was this sweet, wonderful man who everyone adored. And then there was a accident, and a metal rod went through you. If you Google him later, you can see it. It's too graphic for me to put in my PowerPoint, but a metal rod literally went through his head, and he was still talking and conscious. So if you don't know that losing consciousness or remaining consciousness has nothing to do with you not having a traumatic brain injury, this is something for you to think about. But as you can imagine, he became a very different person after that. He became very mean. He became very short-tempered, and people around him were actually like very sad that they felt like he became a completely different person from this injury. And so that's kind of like the most extreme example. Typically, when someone hurts their brain for whatever reason, whether it's an actual traumatic brain injury accident where like a very specific thing happened and you had a blunt force trauma, or whether it's something where maybe you had toxicity to mold and you were exposed to mold, or you had heavy metal toxicity, again, things that you don't really have control over and don't know until you start getting sick. These can hinder your brain function, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. And as you can see, your brain is very soft. People don't really realize how soft it is. And our skulls are very sharp with bony ridges. So our brain is about the consistency of Jell-O, custard, or soft butter. And especially right behind your ear, so like right here is what we call the temporal lobes. That's, as you can see from this diagram, where there tends to be the biggest indent, which means there's the biggest bones and the sharpest bony ridges. This is the most common area to hurt when you have a brain injury, called the temporal lobe. And when you have an injury to this area, you can have memory problems, you can have dark thoughts, you can have a variety of different problems. And it's very common to have them because this is typically a part of the brain that is more easily hurt when there is a car accident, or you have a slip and fall on the ice, or whatever it happens to be that resulted in a brain injury. The good news is that we have over 100 billion cells in our brain, and we can do things to get more brain cell activity. The areas that fire together wire together, which is why gratitude is so important and can improve your brain function substantially. And then anytime you're having negative thoughts, like talking back to the thoughts, journaling about them, like getting them out, because the more healthy, loving thoughts and healthy, loving things you can do for your brain, such as supplements and hyperbaric oxygen and bioidentical hormones and all the things that we're going to talk about today, those are actually helping you grow new cells and have neuroplasticity. And there's a few great books about the miracles of neuroplasticity. And I'm always a proponent that anything is healable if you are willing to do what you need to do. And sometimes it's stuff that's really easy, and sometimes it's stuff that's really hard, and sometimes it's stuff that's free, and sometimes it's stuff that's really, I hate using the word expensive, but like does cost cash money. So we're going to kind of go through the different things about that. And then continuing with the B in brain care is talking about the brain. So even though the brain is only 2% of the body's total weight, it uses 20 to 30% of the calories, which is so important for us to really like think about like what you're putting in your body, which is your temple, this like beautiful divine vessel that God gave you while you were here on this planet. And so what you do put in your mouth is very important as far as how your brain functions. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the gut in a few minutes. And the brain has a storage capacity of 6 million years of the Wall Street Journal, which like, it just like makes me so excited. One of the things that I really love talking about is, organization and time management. And in the world of today, where we have so many distractions and there are people who spend billions of dollars to keep us distracted, it's just really crazy to me that we have the ability to have that much information in our brain. It's just so freaking cool. And one of the interesting things about the brain that a lot of people don't know is that the brain doesn't fully develop for girls until they're 25 and for boys 28. And if you have ADHD, if you have some learning disabilities, that puts you 2 years behind socially. So when you're thinking about all the decisions that we make, I mean, I have a September birthday, so I went to college at 17. It was not really a good choice, but it put me on my path, so it's totally worth it. But it's just interesting to start thinking about age and what people want to have accomplished by a certain age and all these things when we start to realize that like our brain literally isn't developed until we're 28. So it's very, very interesting. And then the average attention span for a human right now is 8 seconds. And the average attention span for a goldfish is about 7 seconds. So we are getting very close to going kind of the opposite direction with our evolution. And I do a lot of webinars and things just solely talking about attention because I'm so passionate about it as an ADHD coach, because your attention and your time is your biggest commodity. No one is on, their deathbed and is like, I wish I had worked more. You know what I mean? Like, I wish I spent more time with my family. I wish I had, taken those 5 weeks of vacation every year and just like gone to the lake and like hung out with my family. And it's just really crucial more than ever because of the state of our world and screens and all of that, that we really start thinking about like, if attention and time was my biggest commodity and time was a currency that reflected my life, my quality of life, how much different would I actually spend my time and attention? So I'll get off my soapbox about that. I can literally talk about that for hours, but I just wanted to throw that in there. And then I just wanted to give a couple examples of common ways that we hurt our brains. So a car accident, it really only has to be something where you or the other person were going 25 miles an hour. It really doesn't take so much because our brain is so soft and it's floating around in our skull. It's not like sitting there like totally sturdy, like it's moving around. And so anything where there's a whiplash type scenario can cause a traumatic brain injury. Slip and fall on the ice. I grew up in New England. I mean, I still have a fear of slipping and falling on the ice, even though it's never happened to me or anyone I know. It's just part of growing up in New England. Like you just get scared of that stuff because I know what concussions do. I've had many of them. And when I look back at my timeline of my struggles and things like that, it's just so clear that the untreated, undiagnosed concussions had so much to do with it. And this is why I'm here today, because I want you to know this. I want you to share this with everyone, especially children, so that more people having conversations about their brains is just like a normal thing that we talk about. That is my goal, is to help future generations and making sure that like the stuff that we're going to be talking about today and all the other people who are speaking here, and I'm sure people that you guys follow and stuff too, share the same goal, which is making the world a better place. And to do that is just education and empowerment, which is why I'm so grateful to be here, because I feel like it's a huge, huge honor to be able to talk about this stuff. And then a big one that a lot of people don't think about is, things that happen when you were little, like so little you don't remember. I ran into a fireplace when I was like 2. I had a pretty big gash. And then I know someone that had like a bookshelf fall on them when they were little, and it definitely showed on their brain scan. And then even just like falling out of a bunk bed, again, things that happen when you're little that you might not really remember. So when we're talking about the brain, it's really important to know more about your brain, right? So just like there's a bunch of different types of personality assessments, there's actually a brain health assessment you can take for free. And I just think it's really cool to learn a little bit more. And then also using that along with the inventories you've ever done, like basic psychology. When I got my bachelor's, it's just like Myers-Briggs and like all this stuff. Like, I'm like, that's fine and dandy, but like, what if I could become my highest and best self and I could completely decide to change my personality? Like I could do that just the same as I can completely change my brain. And for me, I had a brain that was spontaneous, persistent, sensitive, and cautious, which, you know, I'm still that way somewhat. However, before I started really working on my brain, it was much more of a clinical issue versus like a personality thing where I was extremely impulsive. I mean, I thank my stars every day. I'm not, you know, dead in a ditch. Like the way that my life was going was not very good for a very long time. I was forgetting huge chunks of my life. I was forgetting conversations I just had 5 minutes previously, forgetting important, fun things that I was doing with my friends. Very, very obsessive. Like if something in my field of view right now wasn't in the place that it normally is supposed to be, I wouldn't be able to focus. And just extreme, extreme sadness, depression, loneliness, hopelessness, and panic attacks. And then like pretty much the highest definition of like overachieving people pleaser. So as I've healed that, so like the stuff on the right, I've been able to transition to more of the left side where there are these important, beautiful things about me as a person, but they're not hindering me in a clinical way anymore. So I think that that's really important. And then the gut. So the gut is your second brain. And one of the things that's important is that everything that you put in your mouth goes to your gut, right? And like, there's all these amazing things. My Chinese medicine doctor has taught me about digestion and just like how kind of magical like the human digestive system is. But what's important is that about 80% of our neurotransmitters come from what's in our gut and how that's reflected into our brain function, especially serotonin. What do people with low serotonin like? They like candy. They like gluten. They like fried chicken. They like all of the things that are not good for your brain because it immediately gives you that relief of this needing the serotonin. But then 5 minutes later, the next day, whatever, then you're having a crash and you start the cycle all over again. There are other beautiful natural ways to boost serotonin. And also just your overall immunity. It's kind of a cool math equation, and I'm good at math in any way, but the definition of an actual healthy gut and healthy immune system is having 85% of what we call good bugs. So good microbiome, and then 15% quote unquote bad bugs. That actually helps you. So when you take a lot of antibiotics, it kills all of your bugs. So it kills the good ones and the bad ones. And so that's why it's really important to really understand functional medicine, really understand Chinese medicine, and using that to your advantage. Because if you take excellent care of your gut, that's 80% of your brain that's acting better, since it's responsible for 80% of your brain function. So it's really, really cool to start thinking about using nutrition that's specific for your type of brain to feel better, because the brain health assessment, brainhealthassessment.com, it will give you recommendations, and one of them will be specific types of nutrition. And I get people that get really hyper focused on that. And I always say, start with a balanced diet first. You can literally Google balanced diet or zone diet, and then tweak it, add a little bit more protein, and then see how you feel. Because if you are doing high protein and you're a persistent or obsessive person, you're going to become more persistent and obsessive. If you are more distracted, inattentive on high protein, you're actually going to have much more better attention and focus and memory. So definitely have that quiz and implement it into your life. Speaking of implementing into your life, I like people to use feelings-based goals. So I did intakes for Amen clinics. And so if you don't know much about them, I mean, they're cash pay, and a lot of people have tried virtually everything to get relief for whatever symptoms they were coming in for, whether it's depression, anxiety, brain injury, PTSD, neurological disorders, whatever it happens to be. And they were so focused on the symptoms, which is important for us to track 100%. But I started realizing I kind of want to know like what their real their core feelings, their core values, the things that they really want to be better in their life. And so these are a few examples of ones that me and some of my clients have shared that I think are really beautiful. I want to feel comfortable in my body. So instead of saying, I want to lose weight, or I want to gain muscle, or I want to have more flexibility, you can say, I want to feel comfortable in my body. I want to feel energized and motivated every day versus I just want more energy, or I want to do the things that I know I need to do. Because when you start paying attention to your, especially for women, because even if you aren't having a menstrual cycle anymore, you still have a natural cycle where you're almost 4 different women throughout the month. And so your energy and motivation levels are totally different. And the way that you eat, the way that you exercise, and the way that you do stuff versus just being and relaxing is very interesting. If you want to know more about that, you can follow Kayla Osterhoff. She is amazing. She's a female brain and hormone expert. And I just soak up everything she talks about, but it's just interesting to think about energy and motivation in a different way. And I mean, I haven't met one person that this wasn't one of their affirmations or goals, which was to feel more energized and motivated. I think that that's a really healthy thing because we're here to help people. We're here to do things in whatever fashion that is. I talked to someone earlier this week who has a very, very impressive resume, is doing really amazing things in the world. But she's like, my biggest, most proud thing is how much I love my children and how happy they are and all the wonderful things that they're doing. And if anything, I wish I had had more children, and she already had 4. So it's just kind of cool to see people's different motivations and things that they use to measure success. This is a big one I get a lot. I want to feel unrushed in the morning. And in general, the morning can really dictate the success of your day. There are people who can have a bad morning and turn things around 100%, but those are people who are already typically doing the work of changing their mindset and doing the gratitude, talking back to negative thoughts, and just, figuring out ways to overcome some of the daily things that we have to deal with on a daily basis. But that's a big one. Wanting to feel more confident, wanting to feel less anxious about the future, wanting to live with a deep feeling of purpose and alignment. That's a big one for me. I want to experience more harmony and honesty in my relationships versus I want to fight less with my spouse, or I want to feel like I'm not nagging, or I want to not forget to do the things that I know my darling spouse asks me to do on a regular basis that are on the fridge and have been on the fridge our entire marriage. And I want to continue being able to remember to do those things. And then wanting to feel more connected. That's a big one also. And I think, again, in the state of the world, this is really the time after coming out of such a collective trauma with the pandemic. We're really realizing that who we spend our time with is really important to how we feel. And if you're really wanting to take your connection with people to the next level, I highly recommend it. And it can really just create beauty in your life. And I love talking about intimacy and communication and all of that stuff. So maybe we'll get to that, but there's some stuff in the PowerPoint too. So we've only gone to B for brain and blood quality. So we're going to dig a little bit more into that. And then these are the other little acronyms that we're going to go through as much as we can. I know it's a lot, but like I said, you guys have access to this. I send emails, educational emails, at least every other day. If you want to, sign up for my emails at fallonjordan.com. You can follow me on all the socials. I am pretty much talking about this stuff 24/7. So do not feel like you're missing out if we don't get to everything. It's me just being very talkative and going on my little tangents.
It should be 3 hours, Fallon. We need 3 hours with you.
I know. I would love that. So B is for blood quality. I know that you think it's B for brain, but it's not. It's for blood quality. This is all part of brain care as the bigger picture. So when I went to see my Chinese medicine doctor and he was evaluating my blood, and he was like, your blood is your, your vital life force energy, and your blood flow is not good. And I'm like, you've seen my brain, dude. Like, my blood flow's great. And he's like, maybe to your brain, but to the rest of your body, it's not. And so knowing that blood flow is the number one predictor of Alzheimer's disease, and that there are a lot of things that can influence blood flow and blood quality, that's why I wanted to share this information with you. So for men, erectile dysfunction is a blood flow problem. So that is a risk factor. Having undiagnosed or untreated sleep apnea is a big one. I had to go through that testing and got some really helpful information in there. And then not eating well, not getting enough sleep. There's a lot of things that hinder our blood flow. And ultimately, if you're taking really good care of your heart, then you're simultaneously taking care of your brain, and vice versa when you start thinking of it in this way. And so this is some more just detailed information that I wanted you guys to have in the PowerPoint. Some of this stuff I just put little bullets and then want to like talk through it with you. This is something I wanted you to actually have and be able to like read and research later. I just think it's really cool. So when I was getting my blood evaluated, my doctor was like, your blood is really mushy. And I was like, is that bad? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, let's fix that. And so the reason was because I had toxic mold, I had yeast overgrowth, and overall, just like I had like crazy water retention. So this has been like totally transformative for me working on this blood quality stuff. And back to the blood flow stuff, I think it's really important to remember blood flow is the number one predictor of Alzheimer's disease. And the Alzheimer's disease is preventable and in some cases reversible. I knew my Alzheimer's risks at age 28 and have done things to work on them. The funny thing is that I got tested for like literally everything several years ago and got treated for a few things that were off, like mercury and lead toxicity. I still had Epstein-Barr virus, which is basically like mono. I still had that in my body active after 16 years. I had it when I was 16 years old. But the one thing we didn't test was mold and yeast, and that's what I had. So most people can live on the planet in good health with, I think it's 25 units of mold in their body, and I had 497. So it's pretty bad. And I like to think that like I was actually at the healthiest point in my life when it happened. But I refer to this doctor all the time, and I was like, I just want to do my own workup and like see what we're missing, because I'm still struggling with my weight and I'm just like so frustrated. I eat so clean, I exercise, I do all the things. So I just like to share that like the information is out there. It's just a matter of how much do you want to know. I want to know everything as often and quickly as possible and how to fix it. Like that's just the way that I want to do it now, because I worked on things so slowly for so long, and I had all the resources and all the tools, but you have to make that decision. Like, okay, like I'm committed to being my highest and best self. I'm committed to it for this reason. And for me, it's being of service and doing exactly what I'm doing right now. So, sleep apnea, lack of exercise, and then definitely poor diet are correlated to low blood flow. So R is responsibility. I kind of just started getting into that, where it's taking responsibility for your brain, your emotions, your thoughts. And I know quite a few of you are survivors of a traumatic brain injury, which is so incredible because you have such a gift to share. You are a gift simply for being here and for going through your experience. And I'm sure a lot of you had some pretty interesting experiences with people and maybe like spiritual experiences where your reality kind of shifted. And so I just think that that's really interesting, because we can determine our reality, and ultimately it starts with us. And we can't change other people, and we can't change the past or control the future, but if we stay present and it's really about staying present. I say the present is the present, right? I know that that's cheesy, but it is, because the more positive, grateful thoughts that you have, the more your brain is going to respond and do that. and your brain has done everything up until this moment to keep you alive and safe. So fear is normal because to your brain, fear is anything that would be new that you haven't done before. And so it's just very interesting when you are really committed to changing your thoughts and your perceptions of things, how even like months, years later, like you'll have those slip ups and you'll hear and feel that fear. And it's like, I had a conversation with fear the other day and I was like, yo, like, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for keeping me alive, man. But like, I don't need you right now. Like, I'm trying to do stuff. I'm trying to do some really cool stuff. I don't need you right now. Thank you. Thank you. Bye. And this is something that I have to remember all the time. I had a little episode last night where I was trying to tell myself, are you going to be curious or furious about this right now? Because I was feeling pretty furious. But when you breathe and come back to your breath, that's the biggest thing. And it's not just about like the deep breath in, it's more about the deep breath out. The longer your breath out, the more that it regulates your nervous system. I love regulating my nervous system. I would say it's my favorite thing to do right now because I want to be able to stop myself when I'm feeling furious about something and I'm feeling like a victim and I'm mad. I want to be able to be like, yo, Fallon, like don't do that. What would you say if you were your client? I'd be like, I am choosing to be curious, not furious. I am choosing not to be a victim. I am choosing to take responsibility. I am choosing to change my perspective about the situation. And I can do that a lot faster now than I have been in the past. But at the same time, like we've survived so much and we have, the data varies. Some people say 7. I believe it goes up to 14 generations of DNA. So even my great grandmother who died in a fire, like her trauma is in my body because we are blood related. So the thing that pissed me off yesterday is not like the actual event. It's the core feeling, which was, I was just talking about this. I can't be loved unconditionally. I can only be loved conditionally. And if I do certain things a certain way, the way this particular person wants me to do them. And so then I'm like, okay, so like, when's the first time I felt that way? When is the most recent time I felt that way? And then that feeling in my stomach and that pain in my chest went away. Cause I was like, okay, so I'm aware of what I'm feeling. I'm aware of a possible reason. We're never going to know the actual reason. It's just like, oh, this is the possibility. I'm being curious. And I'm deciding like, I know what happens to me in my life when I become a victim. And I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that anymore. And perpetrator is definitely not even an option for me. I've never really had issues with that, but I've also had a lot of issues with rescuing. And I even caught myself yesterday having that thought. I was like, I wonder who I could reach out to right now and help. Like, I like literally went from like, okay, I'm not going to be a victim. And then I'm like, ooh, well, maybe I'll do rescuing. And it's like, no, like I'm going to take responsibility. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to allow myself to feel these things. And I'm going to have them go out of my body. And I went on a walk to my outdoor yoga class, which was amazing. And then I ate some delicious food and then I walked home and I felt awesome. And I actually kind of forgot how mad I was yesterday until I saw the slide. So that's pretty progress.
That's really progress. That's cool.
It's emotional and psychological resilience. So that was another thing I did. I got home last night and I wrote down all the things that I'm grateful that I learned from this circumstance and how I'm going to turn it around into something that is helpful. And I definitely think gratitude every morning. I mean, it's a non-negotiable for me and it definitely works magic for people that start to do it. And I know at first it can be hard and you might just be like, I'm grateful for my flowers or I'm grateful for my green candle. Like that's totally fine to start with, but then you start getting more deep and then you start to realize like, I'm so thankful for my flowers because my flowers make me feel abundant. I go to the store and I don't care how much those peonies are. I'm buying them because peonies aren't around very often and they're my favorite flower and they're so pretty. And I'm so happy and grateful for my candle because that candlestick was given to me by my best friend And I actually got that candle on a really special day where I was feeling furious and chose to be curious. And I went out and bought myself a new candle. So it's tying the gratitude of what you're grateful for to the feeling. So I'm grateful that I get to wake up to my spouse every day, and it still amazes me that they chose to marry me. Like, these are just like examples. But definitely in the morning, it's helpful. And then anytime you feel triggered, like I did yesterday, just immediately go to the gratitude. I know it feels annoying, but it's helpful. Same with forgiveness, which is a much bigger scale, but the forgiveness is for you, not for the other person. And this is something I see a lot of people struggling with. And this is honestly like the biggest thing I'm proud of myself for in my whole life. Like, my concept of forgiveness has been beyond anything I could ever imagine. I mean, just the level of extreme anger and like even dark thoughts I had about some people who did very, very horrible things to me. Now I'm just like, it's part of my story, and hurt people, and they were very hurt, and they know what they did was really messed up, and they know how it could have affected my life. But look how beautiful my life is. Like, I'm gonna cry. Like my life is so beautiful. And like, yes, these horrible things happened to me, but I learned so much, and I get to be there for other people. One of my favorite clients is going through a really tough breakup right now, and she's amazing. I mean, you Google her and she's all over the place. Like, she's fantastic. She's going to be even more famous very soon. And she's going through a breakup with someone who is very just not on her level. Let's just say that, like, drinking too much, doesn't spend time with, the children that he does have, barfly, like, not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just that, like, I wouldn't have been able to be there for her from a non-judgmental place, from a very loving place, and letting her know that anything is possible in this situation. But whatever happens or not happens, like, she needs to start doing the forgiveness and grief work now, so that even tomorrow she can wake up with less heartache. Because I know what it's like to break up with someone and you're dependent on that good morning text. I don't know what it is about my story, and I don't know if you can relate, but every person I've been in love with, they always had the good morning text. And I started with that dopamine, serotonin ping, right? And so after months or years of not having that, it was like I woke up and was like just crushed. So I didn't have that dopamine, serotonin. And so gratitude and forgiveness are the best things to kind of get that dopamine and serotonin back up. Physical touch for a lot of people. Hugging is huge. It's the easiest, fastest way to heal because it gives you oxytocin and serotonin. Oxytocin is my favorite drug. Oxytocin is the drug I tell everyone to do. I am, if you're ever in Atlanta, I'm happy to give you some of my oxytocin. I'm a great hugger. It's my biggest claim to fame, but it heals. And I'm not a therapist. I can't do this, but I know some people who are therapists, and I might just say like, hey, I have this couple coming over. I need you to just be there because you're licensed. But they literally have a couple who has been through like so much crap, like infidelity, financial loss, like all these horrible things. And they have a 5-minute hug together, supervised with a licensed provider. And everything that they were upset about melts away. It's literally magic. And I will tell you, it seems silly and it seems weird until you do it. And the biggest things that I've had to do for myself and I have my clients do seem the silliest and the easiest, and they're free, but they're the hardest. They are the hardest. The 5-minute hug. And then looking yourself in the mirror every day for at least 2 minutes. So the best thing to do would be to do it while you're brushing your teeth, and you get real close to that mirror and you look yourself deep in your eyes and you say, Fallon, I love you. I'm not leaving you. What do you need today? What can I do for you today? It's really hard. And then repeatedly saying that you love yourself, looking yourself in the mirror. Again, it's free. It seems so silly, but it seems silly because it's hard. I did a post about this the other day. I'm like, some of the silliest stuff that I do is the hardest, but it makes the biggest difference. And with forgiveness, a lot of that is the journaling, right? Like writing a letter, like, you know, dear dad, like, how dare you do what you did to me? Like, I'm so mad and da, 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 da. But I forgive you. And I forgive that part of me who didn't know that that was wrong. I forgive that part of me who dissociated for a very long time. And then you go, like, you mix this into your grief process. And I'm sure this is a big subject for everyone here, like the grief of maybe your life before the injury, the grief from losing someone. But grief is something that I think, and this is my opinion, like, I feel like we devalue it in everyday life. Like, there are things that we could grieve every day. Like, I could grieve the version of myself yesterday that was really furious and then got furious that I let this person piss me off again. Like, I forgive that person that I was yesterday that did that. And I can grieve that. I can grieve that person that used to be a people pleaser and used to get mad about being mad, but I'm just like not that person anymore. And so there's stages of grief, right? And I just think that it's important to understand that any change can come with grief, and that can be good change. You can start eating healthy, go to a personal trainer. 6 months later, you realize like literally nothing in your closet fits you anymore. And you're like, holy crap, this is amazing. This is what I wanted. I wanted to be this size pant, but you still grieve that part of yourself that didn't fit in that pant before and didn't feel that confident. Like now you walk into the grocery store and like your normal, you know, yoga pants and a t-shirt, but like you feel like the sexiest person in there because you just lost 60 pounds. So incorporating all of that I think is important in our daily life. And then just feeling your feelings and not letting things get stuck. And when you feel stuck, get unstuck. So my mini trampoline is in the middle of my living room at all times in case I need it, just to get it out. I'll shake. I go like this a lot, just get it out and just move the energy, but still feeling your feelings. A lot of people, we feel our feelings and we stay frozen, or we go for a run and we don't think about our feelings at all. Like it's kind of like all or nothing. And I think that there's a lot of good things that come from feeling your feelings, letting the energy move out of you in whatever way is the funnest and safest for you. I love jumping. So the trampoline is like my BFF, but there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. And visualization is even one of those too. You can literally just visualize, you know, words or images or whatever, and just like imagine. One of my favorite things I do with my hypnotherapist is this beautiful giant hot air balloon comes to my house and it just lands there. And this beautiful, handsome man opens it for me and is like, put all of your stuff in here. Anything that is no longer serving you, anything that you're upset about, anything that you're grieving, just put it in here and we'll just let it fly away. And I'm like, awesome. So still feeling my feelings, putting the stuff in the balloon, you know, figuratively, watching it go away. And then again, just like going back to that like forgiveness process. So I know it's getting heavy. So we're going to go back to the brain as an organ, responsibility for your brain. And we're going to talk about how you can reverse brain aging. So not only neuroplasticity, but your telomeres are a strand of DNA cells that you can have measured. It's a costly test. I haven't done it. I'll probably do it at some point just because I want to, but it actually tells you your biological age. So I like to think that I am 37 3/4 technically, but I like to think that my telomeres say that I'm like 32. Doing hyperbaric oxygen therapy, 90 sessions, reduces your biological age, so your measurable telomeres, by 10 years. So that's pretty cool. And if you Google hyperbaric oxygen therapy celebrities, you will see these beautiful people and now realize why they still look so beautiful. Yes, they eat crazy food, or don't eat crazy food, I should say, but the hyperbaric oxygen is a huge piece. And taking supplements, there's probably a few places and pockets in Vermont or California where there's some hippies and they basically make their own soil. They put everything in the soil. They grow their food organically. They're getting the nutrients that they need from the ground. But for 99% of us, we're not, and we need supplements. I like to go back to the periodic table of elements. I don't know what grade you were in when you learned about that, but I think it was in like 4th or 5th. And when you start thinking about your body as that system, it's very cool. Like you need healthy levels of chromium. You need healthy levels of lithium. Why do you think lithium was the go-to for people that were quote unquote bipolar? There's a reason. You need healthy doses of selenium and magnesium. You don't want mercury, aluminum, and arsenic. So I just kind of like to use that to like remind myself, because there's so many people, if you're on social media or you registered emails, people are trying to sell you stuff all the time. And they're going to tell you their thing is the best thing ever. And it's going to help you with all these problems. Tomorrow, you're going to be a millionaire. You're going to have a perfect body, all this stuff. And ultimately it's what's good for you and your body, and making sure that you're taking things that you are well informed about from a provider that knows what they're talking about, but a provider that you trust, a provider that like, they have your best interest at heart and they're there for you. So super, super, super important to do the supplements. Just make sure you know exactly the ones that you need, what the purpose of them is. So back to the feeling-based goals. Instead of, I want to have better focus, I made my client write on a sticky note, this helps me be the husband I want to be because I am more attentive. I don't forget to take the trash out, like all of those things. So really important. I'm a huge fan of the sticky notes. I think it helps a lot. Back to the feelings-based goals, helps so much with people actually sticking to what they're doing. Because if you just like, oh, this is vitamin K on it, this says saffron on it, I don't even know what these do. And even if you do know what they do, it's still like, it's kind of like a spiritual practice to like, I mean, I take so many supplements right now for my detox, but like I put them in my mouth, I'm like, oh my God, this is making me so much happier. This is making me so much smarter. This is making me a better friend. This is making me a better business owner. Like I go through that process, and it took a long time to do that naturally, but like the sticky notes are a place to start for sure, to remind yourself why you're doing it. Bioidentical hormone replacement is important, especially if you've had a brain injury. Your pituitary gland, so if you look inside the brain, it's deep in here. So you'll see it's near the temporal lobes. So that gets damaged when your brain is jerked or hurt. And so that's where your endocrine system and your hormones are. So it is extremely uncommon to have a brain injury and not damage your hormones. Most severe example I can give is the NFL players. Their testosterone, progesterone, and pregnenolone is like basically non-existent because of all of the concussions that they've had. And they go back on hormones and they're like a completely new person. Another extreme example that's really cool is the documentary with the military, quiet explosions. And they talk about this stuff from that perspective of the military population with their severe traumatic brain injuries, and then also their emotional PTSD and how much it helps them. It's a really great documentary if you've never seen it. And then of course, nutrition and exercise is important. And then knowing again, like what you need to focus more on, like, do you need more protein? Do you need more healthy fats? Do you need healthy carbs? And then exercise wise, what's the best thing for you? And it could change every day. You could get in a routine and then need to change up your routine, and just really like listening into your body. So another thing about resilience and responsibility is paying attention to your fat versus muscle. That gives your body resilience. Sauna and sweating in infrared are really easy ways to detox. And, making sure you're getting back in those water and then some of those minerals. And then there's different types of exercise, of course, supplements, hyperbaric oxygen again. This is one of my little things I just threw in here because I think it's important. especially if you've already spent a buttload of money on like your treatment and stuff for your recovery. I write a letter to money every day to help me not again become a victim, and to let know like money and fear, like you were part of my life, and I'm gonna touch base with you every single day, like that it's gonna happen. And it's just amazing the magic that comes from it when you start thinking about money and talking to money as if it's a person. And if you've never done this before, obviously the first time you do it, it's going to be like, money, where are you? What are you doing? Why are you neglecting me? Da, da, da. But you're getting it out just like any other person. You would be forgiving and, you know, going through that process of forgiveness. But I think it's really, really helpful when we're talking about health as wealth, and you need wealth to have true health. Like I think they're very, very interchangeable. And then there's a lot more I can say about this, but I won't go over it right now. If you want more information of some of the people I follow with that financial stuff, let me know. And then A is for airway health. So this is another thing that's very interesting as we are evolving as humans, is our airway is actually shrinking. And so we're not actually getting as much air as we need to. And we're not getting the cleanest air. First thing my doctor did is tell me to get this fancy air purifier, which I did. And I am sleeping better. I really, really am. And my cat was born with respiratory issues. We were talking about the rescue stuff before recording, but I mean, this cat was jacked up. Like he had so many problems with his breathing. I don't know if he's going to make it, but he's 11. He's doing great and reaping the benefits of our new air machine. But ultimately, to have a good airway, you're supposed to have an inch and a half across the back of your mouth. Mine isn't. I'm not quite ready to like do the expander, but that is something at some point I want to do because my TMJ is bad and I want to improve my health in every way that I can. And this is kind of going to be one of the biggest things I have to do. And Dr. Chang Run, CHENGRUAIN, is one of my favorite doctors. He's certified by Dr. Amen. He's certified functional medicine. He was raised by Chinese medicine doctors. So he's really awesome. And he talks a lot about the brain, skull, airway stuff, if you want to do a deeper dive into it. And this is all stuff that I've learned from him. Just super, super fantastic. You can walk into his office in Texas and he can pretty much name off your symptoms based on looking at your back and like looking at how your neck is sitting on your skull and then looking at your airway. It's so crazy.
Fallon, would you be kind enough to type his name into the chat, please?
Of course. Yeah.
Thank you, hon.
Of course. And he does a lot of summits and stuff, like free webinars. They're amazing. So whatever you can subscribe to for him, I would, because every day I'm just like learning this amazing stuff from him. It's really, really cool. This is also stuff that he talks about a lot. And one of the biggest things that's been helpful for me is the last one, the lymphatic system and like draining. I just had a lot of water retention. And so I have my little gua sha. Actually, I think it's in like reachable distance. So every day I do my little gua sha, and you do it a lot and you do it in different places, but it literally is helping move water out and it's helping move toxins out. And that is extremely helpful when you're talking about rehabbing your brain and taking care of the whole system. So jaw, skull, all of those things. Very interesting. Our skull structure has changed over the last 200 years. Obviously, we're not having to like eat really weird food. So that's one of the reasons why things have changed so much. And then of course, the quality of our food and how easily injured our brains are and how much longer we're living with the expectation of having a quality of life to 100 years old. All of that kind of evolutionary stuff is involved, which Dr. Ruin talks about a lot. And one of my favorite things is I, which is actually 3 I's: inflammation, infections, and immunity. Again, just going back to the periodic table of elements, when we're talking about vitamins and minerals, getting your stuff measured and re-measured Vitamin D alone could completely change your life if you are deficient and you start actually taking what you're supposed to be taking every day. And then understanding that sugar is more addictive than cocaine. It is in everything. I could talk about this for 5 hours. Sugar, the Bitter Truth is an amazing documentary that'll do all of the talking for me. But it's just crazy because sugar immediately causes inflammation. And inflammation is bad. It makes you in pain. It makes you depressed. It makes you anxious. And for most people, gluten does that also. It just kind of depends on where you're getting it. Because I have a friend, like, when she's in Europe and eats pasta and bread, she feels great. But when she comes here in States, like, they just add so much sugar and other junk that it causes an inflammatory response. And then for some people, dairy is really something to stay away from. And this isn't discussed as much as sugar and gluten, but especially with people who have like a wrecked gut. So for example, someone who has been diagnosed with leaky gut, someone who was born or, around 2 years old, started developing autistic-like symptoms. If there's no sugar, no gluten, no dairy, no corn, they can have a significant reduction in their symptoms, because dairy, again, like some of the additional stuff that they just happen to put in it in the States and not other places, acts like an opioid. And if you don't know what opioid means, think of an opiate. So an opiate would be like painkillers and heroin, like not good stuff. Dairy acts on opioid receptors in the gut, which makes it very, very addictive. And I have seen people who have children with disabilities, chugging milk. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is literally the worst thing for them. So worth looking into a little bit more research about those things. Because at the end of the day, they're all causing inflammation and just feeding disease and the bad bugs in the belly. Autoimmune disorders, I could also talk about this for 5 hours. I'm actually sitting on my new earthing mat, which I'm so excited about. So autoimmune disorders have risen substantially since they started putting rubber in the soles of our shoes. So we are not grounded. And when we are not grounded, we have a lot of problems. And the graph of when they started putting rubber soles in our shoes and the rise of autoimmune disorder diagnoses, it's literally straight up. It's super trippy. I'm going to put this in the chat before I even say it. Clint Ober earthing movement. He does, his whole life is talking about earthing, which, walking barefoot ultimately is the earthing you would be doing. But like, I'm sitting on my earthing mat, which is very much helpful. And it's crazy the results that he has just from people walking barefoot 20 minutes a day in their autoimmune disorders. Super, 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 super cool. I know. So Dr. Mercola is a pretty famous doctor. He literally refuses to wear shoes. So my friend is a psychiatrist and a functional medicine doctor who's very, very does what he wants. He's a hippie too. But he literally saw Dr. McCullough at the airport, and Dr. McCullough was walking around the airport without shoes on. I'm like, that's where I'm trying to get to in my life. That is what I'm trying to do. Lyme disease, Candida, and Epstein-Barr virus are a few examples of infections that are not commonly diagnosed, not commonly searched for, and there aren't as many doctors as there needs to be who can actually treat these effectively. That's why you want to see a functional medicine doctor and or a Chinese medicine doctor who is Lyme literate. They literally speak Lyme disease. They can treat Lyme disease, because that is a very, very, very tricky one, which I'm sure has its own documentary about that too, because there's a lot of conspiracies around why it even exists. Yay, neuroplasticity. This is my favorite one. Your brain and body are meant to heal themselves. And we talked about you choosing your reality and your perspective, and all the things we've talked about so far definitely help. Supplements, bioidentical hormones, hyperbaric oxygen, all the fun things. But there's other things too, like music and sound frequency, and you can literally download stuff for free on like Spotify or YouTube. Can literally type in high frequency healing and it'll give you some stuff, and it'll give you the hertz, and it'll tell you the number, and like the higher the number, the higher the energy frequency, which is how much higher it could actually help you. I can't stand scary movies. Like I still have nightmares from when they actually just had commercials of scary movies that happened to catch my eye when I was in between watching my comedy. And it's crazy because they actually put certain music in scary movies with a frequency that is meant, like it's a low frequency that is meant to terrify you and meant to drain you. So there's a lot to the music and sound frequencies. I've really gone down a path with this recently. So I've always loved music, but I'm being much more mindful of what I listen to. And I started going to sound baths, and I've been having these like whirlwind experiences. I mean, like having a pretty not great day and going to a sound bath and leaving feeling like the best I've ever felt, and feeling that way for weeks. Like it's so crazy. And again, these are all things you can literally get for free. And then I always like to remind people that miracles happen every day. And I'm sure a lot of you are no stranger to that just by being here or having your loved one here from something, you know, that happened with that related to their injury. And I just like to remind myself of that. And I journal about it every day, that I believe in miracles. I expect miracles, and I, you know, create miracles when I can. And there's a lot to intention. And there's a really great book called The Intention Experiment. Put that in the chat. Which says, you know, I'm all about, and if you follow me, you'll know like manifesting is like my life. But when you manifest for other people, it tends to work faster. And especially if there are multiple people. So for example, prayer groups, like a lot of churches have that. I actually found someone recently and was looking at their website, and they have a submission for a prayer request. And I'm like, oh my God, that's awesome. Because there's multiple people in one area setting the same intention. Like, I really want, you know, we are asking for Bob's ankle to heal quickly. That is our intention. And everyone focuses on that, and everyone thinks about that. And it can happen. And there's a book also on miracles, called Miracles. I have to find I'm just going to grab it because I can't remember, like, Wake Up Miracles. All stories of miracle stuff. Super, super, super cool. Because your thoughts matter. And when you are thinking about helping somebody and multiple people are wanting to help that person too, it's really, really magical. Daily brain care. So these are things that I've talked about a lot. Meditation I haven't talked about, very important. And it can be anything you want. Like my friend calls it quiet time by himself with his eyes closed. Like whatever floats your boat. Like meditation can have kind of like a cool big thing. But like for me, like I lay in the sun, like eyes closed quietly for 20 minutes. Like that's my meditation. Other times I actually do listen to something with my headphones on. It just depends on the day. It's just really important to be grateful, set intentions for your day. And even if you're like, I don't even know what the frick I'm going to do today. I don't know if I'm going to feel good enough to do anything today. That's fine. Just journal about it. Just say like, I don't know what I'm doing today, but I know something great's going to happen. I just don't know what it is. Or I am giving myself a break today and I'm just going to rest and relax today. Like that's what I'm doing. But anything you can do to reduce your stress is huge. And then eliminating toxins. The Think Dirty app, I hope, will be your new best friend. So it tells you how toxic items are. And when we're talking about our skin, brain, the gut is the second brain. our skin is our third brain. Our skin is our biggest organ. The skin is super cool. And sometimes we don't give it enough credit, right? It's super magical. If you're putting like very bad lotions on your body, it's going through your entire body because your skin absorbs everything within seconds that you put on it. So really, really, really important to eliminate toxins. There's a couple other what I call rescue methods that I haven't mentioned yet. If you're like, I really need help now. Neurofeedback is a big one. And then at the bottom, the PEMF, it's like a funky little device, but it's super fun and has some really amazing research of how much it helps. Maybe some of you have heard of the V light. I didn't put that on there, but now I'm realizing I need to. Again, things that seem silly and simple, but they work. And then chiropractic neurology is fantastic. So these are chiropractors who went for a special certification in what's called functional neurology. So your cerebellum is back here in your brain. It's where 50% of your neurons are, and they're directly connected to your eyes. So just like my Chinese medicine doctor always looks in my eyes, at my little crevice thing, they use eye movements, chiropractic neurologists use eye movements to rewire the brain so that your cerebellum is the strongest it can be, since it's 50% of your brain cells. And if you're like me and you had a traumatic brain injury, 2 or 3 or 4, there was a spot where I was like probably about this size where I was getting no blood flow in my cerebellum from the injury, none. I wanted those brain cells back. And so chiropractic neurology is it's a faster way to get it back. It's just a matter of like the different things that you feel more comfortable with. And at the end of the day, it's all about who you want to work with. Like I call it a full body yes. Like you Google the doctor, you learn more, you call their office, like you do the research and that like you're hiring them to help you. And if you aren't getting the vibe, then don't hire them. But there's some really, really amazing doctors out there who do the Chinese medicine, functional medicine, quantum medicine, neurofeedback providers, chiropractic neurologists, all the fun things. So the C in brain care is community. And Tony Robbins says that loneliness is the biggest killer. And I definitely agree. I think that, loneliness definitely puts us at, I know that it puts us at risk for the things that I stated here on the screen, but at the end of the day, like back to the oxytocin thing, I've been studying a lot of like business stuff recently, and I just reread The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, and I'm just like super obsessed with him. And he even says that like 80% of the people he works with who are very wealthy are not happy with their personal lives. They are struggling in their marriage. They are struggling to bond with their children. And this is all just based on fear, right? Like fear of rejection, fear of whatever. So when I say loneliness, I'm not talking about you being on your own private island and just being like sad that no one's there. I'm talking about like actually feeling lonely and that you're not connected to people who love you for you unconditionally and are going to support you in whatever way that we can. And I know that you're here. So I know that you are in a community of some kind through Dr. Wolf, which I'm so grateful for, because I feel like that's the most important thing in life. And especially when you are really healing through something that was really challenging and difficult. But this is why, like, I love working with families. I love helping them deepen their connections. They're not feeling like they're walking on eggshells around each other anymore. They're having intimate conversations. They're really bonding with their children and like understanding more about their kids and like the things that they like and their cute quirks. And I love talking about this because there are just so many people out there who are just, again, like fear is there to protect you. It's kept you alive, but they're having a hard time breaking that barrier from going from fearful to open, and especially open people who are in your life and you want to be closer to. Like you already got them, like let's make the most of it, right? But I think that's a really, really important piece to share. And a perfect example is the blue zones. kind of crazy how much people thrive, and then ultimately it's saving everybody else money. And these are just some really cool facts about them. It's just very, very fascinating.
Fallon,
And
do you want to describe what blue zones are for people who don't know?
yes, so, and this is a fun thing to like go down a rabbit hole on. So these are places where people are the happiest and they live the longest. And the cool thing, and that if you think I'm like a total, like I'm talking back to myself from everything I said earlier, the thing about them that is so magical is like one of the blue zones in Italy, for example, they eat gluten, right? Like they drink wine, some of the things that like in America we can't do because it's all filled with sugar, but they are not on screens. They not only do they exercise every day, but they walk up and down very big, arduous hills every day to go spend time with their friends. So their sense of community is very high. And a lot of times they actually have a community garden, and they just have more of a community mindset around like how they raise their children and school. And like a lot of those things were here. It's just kind of like, I just think of it as like little boxes, and like there it's like a big meadow. I don't know. It's just kind of like how I describe it, but they're just very specific places that have a beautiful reputation of being the healthy, happy places. So if you want to learn more about them, there's an amazing website about the Blue Zones Project. And it's just crazy to think about how long people can live, because back to the telomeres and the hyperbaric oxygen therapy, there are people who are already living to past 100 years old, health, like in very good health, and they're happy and they still have their brain function. But I always think, I'm like, I wonder what happened if we threw them in that hyperbaric chamber. Like maybe they can make it to 110, 120 in that same capacity. So it's just really cool to kind of take, like, I like to different things together, because I don't like when people feel like if you don't do this one thing, your life's not going to change. Or if you don't do all of these things, like nothing's going to change. There's options, and it's about what's unique to you. Like, what do you need more of? Do you need more nutrition? Do you need more intimate connection? Do you need to be outside? Do you need to walk barefoot? Like, what is it that you feel is the next step for you? Because this is a lot of information, and it's ultimately just like really tuning into what you feel is best for you intuitively. But again, like working with people who you know have your best interest in mind and are really on this journey of healing with you. Few questions to think about. Do you make time for friends and neighbors? Are you connected to your local community? Are you connected to past generations or future generations? What do you want your legacy to be when you leave the planet? And then I'm really big too into supporting small businesses. Do I still get stuff from Amazon every once in a while? I mean, yes, I'm human. I'm not totally off the wagon yet, but it's important for me to like, I try to always get my gifts from small businesses, and I encourage small businesses to connect with me, and like we refer to each other and things like that. It's just kind of cool. And I mean, I live in Atlanta. It's a pretty big city, but when you start thinking in this way of like community and connection being a huge key to unlocking my highest potential, it's just really cool what happens. And you never know whose life you're going to change. There's a local artist who I am always talking about, referring to, resharing all of her stuff on Instagram. I mean, we've only had one conversation, but I have like 4 pieces of art in my house. And I always am telling people like, she's going to be in this part of town. You should go to here. So you never know what's going to happen when you start connecting with the right people and just helping people and what feels good for you. So also kind of going on community and communication. Also, male and female brain types are very different. Male and female communication styles are very different. Adult and child are very different. So I love Allison Armstrong is my favorite person for male versus female communication styles. And then Love and Logic is an amazing parenting and teaching curriculum that like really helps you understand how to talk to children, especially when it comes to children who might be a little defiant or have trouble listening. Those are total golden nuggets. And nonverbal cues and mirroring is a big one. I tend to get people who are females married to males very excited about this when I'm like, what if we could train your husband to never forget to shut a cupboard? Like, wouldn't you be so excited? And the nonverbal cues and the mirroring are very helpful. And also just being like, wow, I'm so grateful that the kitchen looks so good. What do you think is different? It's like, oh no. It's like, no, I feel like something's, I'm trying to think of what it is. Like, I don't know, like, oh, all the cupboards are closed. Like sometimes I come in here and they're open and I guess I'm realizing how calm that makes me feel versus having, being conflict avoidant or passive aggressive. And these are things that I've learned from Allison Armstrong and Love and Logic. Just really helpful tips. And then touch is a big one, especially for people with ADHD. Touching them, looking them in the eyes when you're trying to, when you want to say something important to them is very important. Highly recommend the resources there. And Allison Armstrong goes into this too. She's not a brain expert, but she talks about the hunter brain for a male and the gatherer to a female. Typically, I always say I have part masculine brain because like if someone says like, I need you to find this thing at like a store or whatever, like I can find it, but I definitely have that gatherer part too. Biggest thing too, when I work with couples is men require 30 minutes of transition time between work and home. That can completely change your entire family dynamic. And that includes children. So anyone who is male, that is huge because of that hunter brain. They need that time to transition. And I know it's complicated if someone works from home, but just being as a woman, for me, being like present of that with like my guy friends is, I mean, it's a lifesaver, honestly. And I learned all this from Allison Armstrong. Definitely get some of her information. And I don't think I put this in the chat. Kayla Osterhoff is
I got it and put it in there already, Fallon.
Okay, cool.
And did the little neuropsych.
Yes.
Up.
So she talks about the female brain and how magical it is and how cool and amazing it is. Allison Armstrong and I talk about just men they tend to be more distracted and forgetful. Like they have bigger brains, but they can't concentrate as many things. And women have more connections. And we tend to be more intuitive and anxious. And we tend to respond best to active feedback. However, we don't want you to tell us how to fix something and go immediately into a conflict resolution. We just want you to listen to us, let us express our feelings. And then at a time that feels convenient where we're not emotionally charged, let us know, hey, I'm really grateful that you shared that you were having that problem with your business partner. I actually been thinking about it and I might have a couple ideas. Are you interested in listening? Versus immediately going into resolution mode when a woman is trying to share something with you, usually doesn't work out. So that can be helpful. So A is for abuse and trauma. This is super important. And I'm so glad one of the speakers is talking so much about this, because if we lived in a world where every child went to the pediatrician twice a year and they had this questionnaire and they answered honestly, the world would be a very different place, because children would not be suffering the way that a lot of them are. However, we also need to do this throughout our whole life. So seeing our doctor every 6 months throughout our entire life, because we need to stay on top of how these things have affected us. I didn't find out about the ACEs until when I was in my 30s. And it was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, and I always think back to my pediatrician because I really liked him, but like, H2, like you have ADHD, like good luck. Nothing I'm going to do about it. And I'm like, okay. Looking back now, it's like, well, there was a lot of signs of other things that were going on that were trauma related and not necessarily ADHD related that could have been helpful. But when you start learning about the ACEs and you look at the data, it's scary, but it's also empowering to know that we can make a difference. And it's literally just by encouraging physicians and pediatricians to start doing the ACEs and to implement that into care. Dr. Chang Ruan, who I mentioned earlier about like the skull brain airway stuff, he's amazing. And he does the ACEs with all of his patients. And it's just fantastic that we have doctors out there who are doing this work, which is why I always want you to hire people who really have your highest and best interest in mind. And this is like a little image from npr.com about ACEs and then also work and like a poor work-life balance and how a lot of things are just kind of like overlapped. It's very interesting. This is a slide that's like totally does not need to be here. But it's okay. I do HR stuff sometimes and I help people with conflict in the office. And it's crazy. A highly stressed employee costs the company an extra $2,000 a year in healthcare. And when Aetna started using meditation programs, their healthcare costs went down immediately. And it's just kind of cool that that's in here. Yeah, so only 5% of employees demonstrate active participation in traditional wellness programs. But when you incorporate the brain and some of the other things that I've been sharing, that actually can help reach other people because it's relatable and it removes the guilt and shame, because we talk about every other body part and you get picked and prodded in every other part of your body most of your life, but nobody's talking to you about your brain. So when you are like, if anyone here works in corporate or thinks there's some conversation we could have related to this at some other time, let me know. But it just, everything changes when you start talking about the brain. Everything changes. So ACEs and trauma, these are ways that you can heal trauma safely with a provider. And EMDR is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. So again, back to the eye cerebellum connection and the eye movements giving us so much information. It's just mind-blowing and beautiful. Brain spotting does the same thing in a different way. Hypnotherapy, I'm sure some of you might have heard of, but it's amazing. I've been doing it for the past 12 weeks very intensely, and it's hard to pinpoint what it's helping with, but I just like my negative thoughts and my anxiety overall is so much better, and my sleep is better, and I'm having less like nightmares and stuff. Somatic experiencing, cognitive behavioral therapy, and dialectical behavioral therapy. Oxytocin, so again, like the bonding hormone, so hugging. If you are someone you know has like severe trauma or is just having a very hard time like getting, going about your daily life, you can actually see a good functional medicine doctor and ask them for oxytocin as a prescription. And you can actually have a nasal spray, or I don't know why they do it this way, but the one that I had, it was like the best day of my life when I got to try it. Those like pieces of candy paper where you peel the little half moon off, they're so disgusting, but I was a kid. It's like that, like it's literally like this little half moon, and it just like melts in your mouth and it tastes like mint. But I've had people completely transform their lives to the point where the doctor who prescribed it made sure they were already in grief counseling, because she was going to heal so quickly that he was worried she was going to rebound, because she was going to wake up one day and feel amazing and be like, why do I feel amazing? And like go down like a weird, not healthy path. So grief counseling was like a huge part of her recovery, along with the oxytocin, and she got much, much better very quickly. Grounding, like I talked about, walking barefoot, and then some of Clint Oprah's products, which one of them I'm sitting on right now. So grateful. And then meditation, visualization, and then rewriting your story. So, you know, instead of like this really, really horrible thing happened to me, it messed up my life, etc. Like this really weird thing happened to me and it was not exactly a pleasant experience. However, now I am experiencing, you know, this beautiful relationship or this beautiful opportunity to completely change my purpose and my service on this planet. But I know I went way over, but Dr. Wolf hasn't stopped me yet. Because we're at R, which is for relationships. I've talked about this like in and out of the call today, but ultimately, like, again, like writing a letter to money, talking back to fear, talking to yourself, and like having a relationship with yourself. And the looking yourself in the mirror and telling yourself you love you every morning and what do you need today is huge. And then just starting to treat yourself like your best friend and talking to yourself like your best friend, talking to yourself the way that you treat your animals. I wrote an email about that the other day and everyone loved it. Cause I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like total baby voice over here. I'm like, oh my God, Archer, I love you. You're so cute. You're the most amazing cat in the whole world. I love you so much. Talking to yourself that way. And then this concept of giving and receiving, I could do like a 5-hour webinar on that. That's a lot of what I worked on with my business coach, because we're just taught to give, be generous. And then when we're actually given something in return, we sometimes feel guilty or we feel like we have to immediately do something back. And I really believe that God and the universe are always balancing things out for us. And so me receiving a gift from someone, like someone gave me this grounding mat, which I'm so grateful for. And I know that it costs quite a bit of money, that I'm not necessarily immediately going out and getting her something because I have to. I've given her a lot of things throughout our relationship that have helped her life in a very different way. And it helps me feel better. And now I can be generous and do something else that's going to help someone in some way. And so receiving compliments is the big one. When someone compliments you, you say thank you and you smile, and that's it. End of story. You do not make an excuse. Oh, I'm glad you like this blazer. I've had it forever. It doesn't fit, or no, nothing. You say thank you, smile. That literally is restoring your brain. Oh, I am an excellent receiver. I can receive the things that I want. God is going to provide me with the things that I'm asking for because my brain is actually receiving. So again, like I could talk about this for like 5 hours, but like receiving and giving is so important to understand how we've been controlled to kind of think that it's just not what we think it is ultimately. And then being around people who support you and people who are complaining and are jealous are, I mean, we all go through phases 100%, but at the end of the day, if this person is continuously making you feel drained, you feel like, this is how I feel now that I'm at where my business, I'm like, I feel like you should be paying me because you are like really stealing my joy here. You're really stealing my energy that I really need for people who actually want it and are appreciative. So that is important. Time is up. You have the rest of the presentation. I'm so grateful and I will see you guys soon. Let me put my last slide so you can see my info. And I'm the only blonde Fallon Jordan that I know, so you can easily find me if you can't jot this stuff down. There's one Fallon Jordan with long black hair somewhere. It's clearly not me.
Before you depart our lovely way, madam, there was a question about, a couple people private messaged me and said, who's the financial guru? Would you put that into the chat?
Yes.
And then the kind of air purifier.
Yes. Okay. So this is why I love my bookshelf being right here, because then I just like write down all the names of the people.
We were all like glued to the tube. It was amazing.
I'm so glad. Oh, where are you? Oh, it's in my bedroom. I'm rereading it.
Oh, we get to look at your lovely chair.
I love my chair. I'm so excited. Okay, those are the financial people. And then my air purifier is Austin. I'll tell you what, this thing is amazing. And I have to sleep with noise. Like I always have like a fan.
Mm-hmm.
And this thing just like hums beautifully.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. You're amazing. We're
You're
so
amazing.
glad that you decided to join us from Atlanta.
Of course. I'm so honored.
Well, we haven't done this kind of a conference in like, I don't know, 10 years.
Oh my
So
gosh.
we've always done kind of like small, general sessions, learn how to carry the message. I'm in university, you know how it goes.
Yeah.
And this, it was an experiment in cutting edge fun where people are like you are involved with a lot of different rabbit holes, but you can take what you learned in the rabbit hole and bring it back to center. And I think that's powerful.
Thank you. And thank you, Anne, for recognizing that I did warn you that it is like drinking like a fire hose. And that was me really trying to be slow.
It was great. And we've got the PowerPoint slides. So we're like, yay, us.
I know. I'm so excited.
You're a rock star.
How do you find time for all these therapies you do?
Well, and I remember early on in my 30s, I ran across a therapist and he was really an interesting guy. And he said, go home. And he said, stand in front of the mirror naked and look at yourself and tell yourself that you love yourself. And I tell you, just like you said, it was the hardest thing to do.
Yep.
Because I did felt overweight, all that crazy stuff. Yeah.
So so Tracy said, how do you find time for all these therapies? So The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, he has my favorite way of describing time because time really is your biggest commodity. I don't know if you've seen the movie In Time with Justin Timberlake and Amanda Seyfried.
Yesterday. So,
oh my goodness.
it's yeah.